This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is May 5th, 2025. Welcome to the podcast. And as I normally say, please subscribe to my program. I'm probably 2 or 3 weeks from getting my live feed so that I can talk about local politics. Let me give you a sampling. Did you know that the Illinois legislature just passed a law for electric companies to raise their rates for families of $40 to $60? They have a plan to build a new plant or something like that. But my point is, our elected officials in the legislature went along with that to make that a law. In Illinois, like I've said previously, especially in the Metro East, we do not know what's going on in the state. So that reporting will be coming in the future. So I'm excited to do it. So today, I want to talk about U.S. federal government policy on Mexico. A couple of things happened over the weekend with Mexico that I wanted to highlight and really get a better understanding, or have U.S. taxpayers and subscribers to this podcast understand about Mexico and the reporting that's been done by the mainstream media that makes some of these things very misleading. Okay, so first one is help the U.S. with fentanyl. There was a story that the Trump administration volunteered to help Mexico to get rid of the logistics of fentanyl being brought into the States. And that basically means go into their country, look at how people are transporting it to the border, and really look at ground zero, which would be wherever they're raising it, going into the trucks, and maybe even confronting the cartels. Well, and I'll say this probably 2 or 3 times. Over the years, Mexico has tried to stop the flow of illegal drugs abroad to other countries. What keeps happening is that they are clashing with the cartels and probably some corrupt police who are making additional money. Now, most Americans don't understand that the regular person in Mexico does not make that much money. Now, if you live in Mexico City and you're part of an elite group, so in Mexico, bottom line is either you're very rich or you're very not. So, with that being said, that's why people are attracted to helping the cartels, like the police officers, people like that, people in the military, because their wages from their professions, those two, military and police, don't pay that much. So next we go into the trade wars. As you know, the trade wars have kicked into high gear with Mexico. Now, the resorts are mainly owned by the government, and they're also owned by people in Spain. That's right. They are owned by them. So the regular people don't have any say in the trade wars, because these top companies, corporations, they're in the top 1%. The difference is, to kind of bring the point clear, we have a strong middle class. So the CEOs and some of the mid-level to senior managers, they would be in the middle class and they would weigh in more on, say, the trade wars. Well, in Mexico, no one has explained to the general American public that most of the money in Mexico is in the hands of 1 or 2% of people, and a lot of that money goes back to Spain. And where the people are really not involved in these trade wars, and the people pushing it are these 1 or 2 percenters, and then they're the ones passing it on to the American public. That's important because it's what the 1 or 2% decided to charge us more for goods being imported to the United States. So if that was explained better, can't be angry at the regular persons in Mexico because they actually have absolutely no say in how things are done in the country. And yes, they have a president. However, they are still in those elite circles. Okay, next thing is immigration. Believe it or not, and you're going to think that this is not true, but it is. Normally, people who come across the Mexican border, a lot of them are not from Mexico. They're from these other countries. Now, that has been highlighted by one news agency, which would be Fox News, that they're actually cutting through Mexico to get to the United States. Why is that important now? When the general population thinks that the Mexicans come into the United States when in fact the numbers have been declining. One of the pivotal things that happened in Mexico that really changed things, and I mentioned this in a podcast, but just as a reminder that when people retire now in Mexico, they started getting benefits. Something like a Social Security, whereas before, when they retired, they got nothing. And then these older people would come to the United States to live with their families from Venezuela, South America, and places like that. So the press has misrepresented who the people are coming into the country. And so to kind of explain this government policy on Mexico, a lot of what we think about Mexico is not true. And I just highlighted 3 things. Now, the next one is the violence with the cartels. There has been a long history of violence between the government and the cartels. As I mentioned in the previous podcast, you would have to go back in the history and see what prompted the cartels to start in the first place. So once you figure that part out, it would make sense now. So there's been bad blood between the cartels and the Mexican government in general. Okay, so the policy with Mexico, with helping with drugs, immigration, those types of things that the Trump administration has mentioned in the last week, the real reason that it won't work is because the Mexican government fears the cartels. In the last 20 years, it'll pop up in news feeds that government officials have been killed. And like I said previously, with the fentanyl, as an example, there are people even in the military who are getting paid by the cartels. When the cartels pay more money, And as I previously told you, people like police officers and people in military, they are not making that much money. They're not a professional force per se, money wise, like we are in the United States. And that hasn't been explained to anyone. And in the fentanyl case, like I told you, it makes it seem like that the Mexican government just doesn't want to cooperate. That's not why. They're scared of being killed. Even the president of Mexico, they fear them. And with all of these things in mind, we, the U.S. taxpayers, we need to dig into the details, and I can do that for you. I just wanted you to know that the Trump administration is actually trying to make all of these changes. And the mainstream media, if they would dig down into these facts that I keep mentioning over these podcasts, taxpayers would get a better understanding. American people in general will get a better understanding to why the policies are headed in this type of direction. If we could stop the cartels from transporting the drugs into the United States, even making the drugs in all of these countries where the climate is right to grow all of this stuff, we would be in a better position to get the numbers down in general for drug use. It would help the trade wars by the people being able to get higher paying jobs because they're not being threatened by the cartels to come and sell drugs because they pay more. And then through immigration, through not letting people from Venezuela cut through Mexico to get to the United States. And the big one is if the cartels are not making money, they're going to lose members. And then eventually, people coming up will take the jobs as police officers, nurses, manufacturing jobs, and all of those things. They wouldn't need the cartels. It's all one big circle that, and it's a domino effect that if you can get things going in a certain way through your policy, right? So the Mexican government should be letting us help them with the drug issues of transporting to the United States. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Let me know what you think. Have a great day.